Hello and welcome to 5-5, Solving Fraction Equations, Addition and Subtraction. So we're taking this way back to Chapter 1, I believe, where we used to solve equations like 5x equals 20. Then I would divide by 5, do our inverse operations. Remember, our operations are adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Those four operations we have there. So if I did it to one side, I'd do it to the other, divide by 5, and I would get x equals 4, because my 5s would cross out, and if I did top divided by the bottom, I would get a 4. Okay, our goal today is that you'll be able to solve equations by adding and subtracting fractions. And as always, when we add and subtract fractions, we need a common denominator. I know a couple of us got tripped up on the last lesson because I didn't specifically talk about it in the video, but if I've talked about it in a previous video, that means that rule still applies. We always need to find common denominators only when we're adding and subtracting fractions. So make sure you remember that one. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, so here I see that the sign in front of my fraction or mixed number is adding. That means I need to do the inverse operation, which means I need to subtract 6 2/3 from each side. Now, if you were doing this in real life, when I didn't have it all typed out, it probably would line up better, but in this case it doesn't, so I'm going to rewrite it. So here I would have 0, so I would just get x equals 11 minus 6 2/3. So we're going to have to take all the tips and tricks we've applied so far and use them today. So here I have to borrow. So I would add 3/3 here. Because I took 1 away and 3/3 is equivalent to 1. We know that because if I divided by 3 divided by 3, I would have 1 over 1 or 1. Right? If I have 1 pie, I cut it into 1 slice and I eat 1 of it. How much did I eat? The whole thing. 1 whole. Okay, so now I would have 3/3 minus 2/3, so I'd get 1/3. 10 minus 6, and I would get 4. So I just have to say x equals 4 1/3. Now here's the thing about this too, is we need to make sure that we pay attention to if we're adding or subtracting. There are a couple times I walked around the room and I caught some kids that added instead of subtracted, so we always need to make sure we double check that before we just go. I think the biggest thing when it comes to math is that you slow yourself down. A lot of times we just feel like we really need to hurry, and I really hope you will slow yourself down for these. Anyways, let's try another one. All right, 2 1/4 equals x minus 3 1/4. So again, you can see here I have minus 3 1/4. That means I'm going to need to add 3 1/4 to each side equals x. Okay, well, 3 1/4 plus 2 1/4 plus 3 1/4. Here I'd have 1/4 plus 1/4, so I'd get 2/4. 2 plus 3, so I get 5. Negative 3 1/4 plus 3 1/4 cross each other out. They would add up to 0. So I would get x equals 5 2/4. And I can reduce this by dividing by 2, so I would get 5 1/2 would be my answer for this one. Again, I double checked. Am I adding or subtracting? Well, I'm adding to both sides, so we're good to go. Let's try another. 5 3/5 equals m plus 7/10. Now if I look at what is the sign in front of my fraction, I see it's positive, so I have to do the inverse or the opposite. So I need to subtract 7/10 from both sides. Now this is where some kids said, wait a minute, Mrs. Hamer, what do I do? Because it's a 5 and a 10. They're not common denominators. And I said, well, get a common denominator. That's all. So if I have plus and minus here, that means these two cross out to 0. So I just get m equals. So I'd multiply by 2, multiply by 2. So now I'm working with 5 and 6/10 minus 7/10. Oh, this one's really tricking us, you guys. Because now I'm going to have to ungroup. I'm going to have to ungroup from my 5. So now I have a 4. I'm going to have to add 10/10. Because I'm just adding a whole. So whatever my denominator is here, that's what I'm going to make my numerator and my denominator if I'm adding a whole. So now I'm doing 4 and 16/10 minus 7/10. I should not have tried to squeeze it all in here. And I was going to say, I'm going to scooch this up. So I have a little extra room here. Okay. 16 minus 7 would be 9/10. And 4 minus nothing is 4. Oh, well, there we go. So m equals 4 and 9/10. That was a doozy, you guys. We had to use ungrouping. We had to find our common denominator. That was a good one to practice all of those things. Those are just tools in your toolbox now. If you see something and you need to find it, now you have that tool to use to help yourself find it. All right, we have 2 more problems to go through. All right, w minus 1/2 equals 2 3/4. So I see, I'm going to look at whatever's in front of my fraction here, and I see it's a minus. So that means I need to add 1/2 to both sides. This would create a 0, so I would be left with w equals, oops, that's a funny equal sign, 2 3/4 plus 1/2. Now I need to get a common denominator because they don't have the same. So I would multiply by 2, multiply by 2, and so I would get 2 3/4 plus 2/4. 3/4 plus 2/4, oh, this is a good one too, equals 5/4. 2 plus 0 would be 2. And 5/4. Now, our brain should say, oh, something's wrong, because our numerator is bigger than our denominator, which makes this an improper fraction. We don't like those in a mixed number. It's either or, a mixed number or improper fraction, not both together. So I would have to subtract a whole from this, which means if my denominator is 4, I'm going to subtract away 4/4 and add 1 to my whole number. So now I would get 3 and 1/4. I mean, another way you guys can do it too is if I did top divided by the bottom. Say it goes in there once, minus 4. I'm left with 1 and 1/4. So if I added that to 2, I would get 3 and 1/4. Because again, we can only add our whole numbers together. 2 options, but we just need to make sure we turn that improper fraction and add our whole number to our mixed number. All right, let's try one more word problem here. On average, a person in Costa Rica consumes 132 1/4 pounds of sugar every year. If the average person in Costa Rica consumes 24 1/4 pounds, less than the average person in the U.S., what is the average sugar consumption per year by a person in the U.S.? Okay, so this looks to me like I would say 132 1/4. The average person in Costa Rica consumes 24 1/4 pounds less than the average. It looks to me like I would do x minus 24 1/4. Now, some of you might try to make a function or an equation that has, 132 1/4 and 24 1/4 on the same side. But that's not what we're used to seeing. That's not what we're trying to get at here. So we want to try and put them on opposite sides of the equal sign. So this one would work for us. So now I need to ask myself what sign is in front of my number, and that will be in subtracting sign. So I need to add 24 and 1/4 to both sides. Oh, common denominators already. We get a 0 here, so I'd get x equals 1/4 plus 1/4 would be 2/4. 2 plus 4 would be 6. 3 plus 2 would be 5. Bring down my 1. 156 and 2/4 pounds. But we do need to, I'll move that up. We do need to reduce. I could divide by 2, divide by 2. So I'd get 156 and 1/2 pounds of sugar. Right. That is all I have for you today. So we're kind of combining a lot of things we've learned about already into just practicing them all together. We practice them all as individual topics, and now we're kind of combining all the tricks of tools we've learned into one big lesson. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.